Welcome back to the next phase of the teardrop project. As probably most of you have noticed, and I have noticed, I tend to say a lot when I try to formulate in my head what I'm going to say, especially in English. I will try to see if I can overcome this urge to say but since most of the time I'm not aware of it, it'll probably happen on and off. As you can see, I've started to lay out what will be the floor of the trailer or caravan. I decided to use angle irons to make the floor. Part of the reason, of course, is the structural strength of an angle iron, and part of it is that my plan is that I will have some kind of board as a floor, plywood or some other kind of board. I haven't decided yet, but hopefully it's going to fit inside these irons. There will be different sections. One intention also being that I want to be able to take them out if for some reason that is necessary in the future. So this is the start of the rear, which I've welded in place. I will now try to zoom in and I'll show you something that's been helpful to me. Especially when I was building the Worcester, somebody taught me this and I will show you. As you can see, it is possible to bend angle irons, rectangular or this kind of tubing in any bent shape that you wish or require. And the technique includes some effort, but it's not difficult apart from that. What you do is you cut. And how many cuts you will have to make, of course, varies with how sharp you want that bend to be. Now this was a 90-degree bend. This is the corner of the trailer. So I had to make cuts spaced at about 1 centimeter apart. So I ended up with quite a few cuts before I could bend it into the shape, into the radius that I wanted. If you're making a shape that is not as sharp as this, you won't need as many cuts. But remember, because it's a really nifty way of actually bending angle irons, square tubing, anything like that, just by making as many cuts as you want, and then you can bend it. So, moving on with building the construction of the floor, I've welded in a couple more angle irons across, and I've also started to make the shape in the front. And I wanted to show you one of the simple methods that I use to get the shapes that I want. To me, one of the big joys of building things yourself is that there will only be this one. It's a one-off, it's unique, for better or for worse. So I also have to find ways that are not too time consuming or too labor intensive when it comes to getting the result, getting to where I want to be, where I want to go. So this is a simple way that I use. As you can see, with the same method, making cuts and welding. I forgot to say when I was talking about it, but of course you make the cuts and then you weld the piece together again. So I make cuts and I weld. But before doing that, I had some basic measurements. I wanted the stick out here to be approximately 15 centimeters. I wanted to make a pretty sharp radius here at the corner. And with those basic measurements, I just kind of on free-handed, of course, measuring these lines that I have so that I wasn't getting too much out of shape. But apart from that, I free-handed this line to where it looked pretty sympathetic to me. And when I've done that, I can start to make the cuts. And as you can see, I have to make quite a few here and even take some of the material out of the angle iron to make that sharp radius. But here, where there's only a slight curve, there's like 10 centimeters in between each cut. So you have to adapt, and if it's not a very sharp bend you want to make, then you don't have to make as many cuts. So this is what I ended up with. Now I'm going to have to make another template for the other side. I could cut this out and switch it over, but it's actually more work, so I'm just going to turn this board around and make a similar line with the similar measurements for the other side. The construction and building of the floor is almost complete. Why not complete? Well, for the longest time I didn't think I would have at all enough of the angle irons, but as I was laying it out, I realized I didn't really have to have as many of these cross members, for example, as I imagined and planned for. And eventually I thought that I would have enough. And I ended up, this is the last piece, missing this piece here, which looks like that over here. So I'm short about 40 centimeters, which I should have needed. Hopefully you can see the shape, which is the basic shape of the trailer, of the caravan. I've also added, in some places, pieces for the board to sit on, to lay on, because the angle irons only face one way, of course. I've also in some places added spacers, here, 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 in some of the places, because these the square tubes sits a bit lower than these, the place where the board is going to sit. But apart from that, that's it.